Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer videos that I have been doing for a while now. The first Sunday of every month I do Subscriber Sunday, where subscribers can send in photos of things in their yard that they're proud of. That was last week. If you haven't seen that video, I had tons of photos for that one. The email address is right here if you're interested in sending in photos for that video. Again, that will be the first Sunday in February. Between now and then, all the Sundays I'll be doing question and answer videos like this one, and you can ask questions down below this video, and I will pick through them each week and decide which ones I'm going to use. I think I said in the video 2 weeks ago, the last question and answer video, that I was going to put up a monthly to-do checklist, which I did for January. If you haven't watched that video, I think it has a ton of views. So if you're interested in just a January checklist, like I said, I can't cover everything in that video. February's will be hopefully right at the end of January. I've already got pretty much all the detail that I want for it written down and ready to go. I just got to get it shot. Okay, questions from 2 weeks ago. There were quite a few, so let's get going on that. Somebody asked me if when we're talking about using compost, what type of compost I would use. I really don't differentiate a whole lot. I will buy the inexpensive compost as long as it's a halfway decent product. I probably wouldn't buy something that's like $1.25 or something like that, something that's a decent product that's well priced. And so most of the time I use cow manure because it usually is a little bit cheaper than something like mushroom compost or something like that. They included in their question cottonseed compost, and I have used cottonseed compost quite a bit in the past. I don't mention it on the channel a whole lot because it may not be available to most people in the country. We grow a lot of cotton in the southeast, and so the cottonseed is composted and works great as compost. It does have a little fire to it. It has some nitrogen, a nitrogen component to it, which can burn things if used too much. And so what I actually used to use cottonseed compost for was rejuvenating a yard. This yard right here would have been a perfect contender for where I wasn't going to plant for a little while, to put down a layer of cottonseed compost, and it's pretty good at just waking things up and just being the trigger for waking things up. But like I say, it does have a little nitrogen in it, and so sometimes I worry about burning roots on things and that kind of thing. I can actually, it's kind of a little bit of a hot product, let's call it that. But cow manure is typically what I'll buy because it's usually priced about right. If I'm in bags. Somebody asked me, I got a couple questions about bronzing on green giant arbor vitae, and that's completely normal in the winter time. It's usually based on how cold your area is, and so people growing green giants in zone 5, they're just bronze in the winter time, and by the time you get down to like zone 8, they're somewhere in the middle, just a little bit of bronze in them. And of course that's going to depend winter to winter on how much bronzing you get. The ones in my area right now kind of turned bronze because we got a little cold toward the end of November, and now they're green again and probably growing. Green giants will actually grow during the winter time in a mild winter down here. But that's what that is, yeah, that bronzing. And most conifers, not most, but lots and lots of conifers turn that bronzy color in the winter time. It's not broken. It'll come back out of it really quickly in the spring. Somebody asked me about a narrow, for a narrow hedge, either using an upright or fastigiate hornbeam. That word's always tough for me. Fastigiate hornbeam, meaning upright and narrow, versus using a European beech, which is also upright and narrow. I got another beech question later. The only difference between the two, and I have a video, and I have photos that I was going to turn into a video of upright narrow trees over here at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum, and I'll get that video edited during the winter at some point because I think it is an important video, because with small lots, I think people are very interested in trees that stay narrow and don't get 50 or 60 feet across. So I have a video upcoming on this. But the difference between that European beech and that upright and that hornbeam is that you could keep that beech, the height, you could really control the height on those. I mean, if you've ever seen a European beech hedge, I mean, you can keep them 2 feet wide and just, off with their heads, and they're actually pretty full in the winter, where the hornbeam's going to become a tree. So, but still super narrow, and I love them, and they'll be part of that video. You don't see as much European beech down here because we have evergreen options like privet if we were going to create that kind of little border. But in colder areas, European beech would work well as a narrow hedge between you and your neighbor. Let's see, somebody asked me about, I've talked about several times about planting newly planted plants around very well established plants or trees, and how difficult that can be. And somebody was asking me if about that, because their azaleas are still struggling, even though they've given them some fertilizer and babied them a little bit. It's just going to take a little while, and it's really water that's the main issue that you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have probably about 2 years for plants. If you plant azaleas up under an established oak, it's probably going to take at least 2 years for them to become established enough to kind of turn your back and go on vacations and that kind of thing and not think about them. That's just the way it is. You can put your best to put drip irrigation under them and just put them on some sort of timer during that first spring and summer. Otherwise, very quickly they could go backwards and you could lose half the leaves or that kind of thing. But it's really water related, not fertilizer related, and they had limbed up the tree, and that probably was helpful too. Getting some additional light under there, getting some air movement under there, that's probably a good call if you're planting under a tree to try to get some additional light and, like I say, air movement. But again, this is a water related issue. They just don't have the roots to compete with that. That tree is just greedy and is able to just take any water you're giving that plant. So it's just going to take a while. Somebody asked me about planting a Japanese maple in a raised bed, and would that be okay? That'd be okay for most areas. The only thing that concerned me was it was in Zone 8 in South Carolina, and your blood good Japanese maple probably doesn't want to be in Zone 8 South Carolina anyway. It's hardy there, but typically look pretty rough by the end of summer in probably Zone 8 South Carolina. The South Carolina part, if you were in western South Carolina in that clay soil and that Piedmont soil like we have here, they're fine. But down toward the coastal areas of South Carolina where that sandy soil already is, if you put a Japanese maple in a raised bed, you're going to need to run drip irrigation to it, or additional irrigation for sure, because it's definitely going to get really crispy by midsummer. It'll flush out in the spring and look great, but by July it could look really super crispy and bad the rest of the summer if you're not irrigating it. Somebody asked me, they had propagated some hydrangeas and were trying to figure out how to keep them through the winter. I believe they were in South Carolina as well. They can be outside most days. I'm in short sleeve shirt, most everybody in the South right this minute. It's very, very warm. I would have them outside almost all the time if they're on their own roots and potted in some sort of little pot or bigger pot or whatever, and only bring them in on the nights that it's going to be below freezing. They need to be outside and they need to go dormant. So they need a little bit of cold on them. In the house, they're never going to go dormant. Hydrangeas need that little dormant period where they're asleep in the wintertime. So get them outside, get them asleep, but don't let any really severe cold freeze the pot solid. Somebody asked me about their tulips that are still in the refrigerator and want to know about planting them. I would just go ahead and bring them on out February 1st and plant them. Know that they're going to come up immediately and they're going to be slightly smaller than they would have been. The one thing about putting them in the refrigerator and then getting them in the ground in December is they won't come up during that time and they'll actually root into the ground. And that, not just the stored energy of the bulb, but also the energy that can be gained from the roots will add to the size of the flower and just the overall plant will be more vigorous that way. If you leave them in the refrigerator until after the first of the year and then plant them later, they're completely cold treated and they will come up immediately. They don't have any additional anything. It'll just literally just be the bulb coming up. So it just makes the flower smaller. That's been my experience. They'll be fine. They'll look great. You may not have even known that if you didn't have anything to compare it to. But yeah, go ahead and about February 1st, put them in the ground and try not to put any of the rotten ones. There'll probably be some soft ones at this point. Make sure you're disposing of those. Maybe go in there now and go through them and make sure there's no rotten ones in there because that rot will spread to the other ones. Somebody asked me about I planted an Oakland holly at the other house on the foundation and they wanted to know would it harm the house. No, I've dug hollies up that were 20, 25 years old, and they're rooted in the ground well, but they really don't take off running all over the place. So I don't worry about putting hollies on like a corner of a foundation, a larger growing one. Doesn't bother me at all. And then I got lots of questions this time around about putting plants on the foundations. Somebody asked about Hollywood junipers. Same thing. You see Hollywood junipers on foundations all over the place. I was down at East Carolina University few years ago, and they had an entire building covered in them on the side. It was so beautiful. And Hollywood junipers, when they're just left to grow, are really, really beautiful. But no, I don't think you have any problem with the roots on them. The only trees that I've really, you know, willows are notorious for it, for being bad like that. My cherry tree at the other house had really super aggressive roots. If a cherry is happy, you know, they have roots that just run all over the place, way out from the tree. Not just in the drip line of the tree, but way out from it. Dawn redwood, I had a dawn redwood at that house that had roots, you know, this big around, and they were 20 and 30 feet from the drip line. I mean, just really super aggressive. That's another one I would avoid. Maples, for sure. I don't like red maples anywhere. I wouldn't want a red maple anywhere near my house. Silver maple, let's just say maples other than Japanese maples, that I would not want near my house. Silver maple might be worse than red maple. So there are trees that I wouldn't want near my driveway and house and that kind of thing. But most things, you know, with halfway modern, you know, techniques for building these houses, I don't think are going to cause you any problems. Do look it up if you're planting a tree and see, you know, that list of 5 or whatever I just gave you is definitely not the complete list of things that will damage your foundation. But those are ones that I've had experience with, or I go, wow, you know, wow, that thing is not. You know, most of the time we say that most of the roots are within the drip line of the plant, and that dawn redwood had roots 40, 50 feet away from the tree. Super aggressive. Somebody had asked me about a hedge that was 90 feet long, 3 foot tall, 2 foot wide, and they wanted to use boxwoods, but they thought they were going to be too expensive. And that's true if you're buying English boxwoods, but you can buy Korean boxwoods, or you can buy Japanese boxwoods. That baby gem boxwood that you guys saw me use at the other house for my little formal garden, those are inexpensive compared to English boxwoods. And almost everything in an equal size container is inexpensive compared to an English boxwood. English boxwoods grow super slow. There is value in them because I kind of like that slow growth if you're using them for a hedge, but it would take forever. I mean, really a long time to have a 3 foot tall English boxwood hedge from a, you know, a 1 gallon size container that most of us could afford. But you can, like I say, there are Japanese and Korean boxwoods that you can use, and they're actually seem to be more resistant to boxwood blight, which is another issue we have going with boxwoods right now on the American boxwoods and the English boxwoods. So keep that in mind. Okay. Thank you very much for watching this video. Ask questions down below, and next Sunday there'll be another question and answer video.